greatest engineering undertakings in the history.
Freedom came under attack.
Hello, my name is Carlos Lopez, PhD candidate in the School of Historical, Philosophical, and Religious Studies, and I will be talking to you today about the Native American genocide in the United States. For the next few minutes, I will be discussing the difficulties in studying the Native American genocide, our project's understanding of genocide where it pertains to Native Americans, major texts to understand the basics of genocide in the United States, and online resources that you may find helpful in finding testimonies for your study. You will find that this is one of the most controversial genocides that you will encounter. For the most part, Americans are very reluctant to acknowledge the fact that there was a genocide committed on American soil by the United States government. There are many reasons for this, including refusal to paint the United States in a negative light, misunderstanding of the nature of the Indian Wars fought between the U.S. and Native tribes, a strong belief in the notion of manifest destiny, that the United States was preordained to rule the continent from coast to coast, and the romantic notion of the Old West, where settlers and cowboys had to fight marauding bands of Indians for their very survival. Even among historians and other intellectuals, the notion of an American genocide, or the degree to which Native American rule can be called genocide, is heavily debated. While a precise definition varies among genocide scholars, a legal definition is found in the 1948 United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, or the CPPCG. In Article 2 of the CPPCG, genocide is defined as any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. As such, A. Killing members of the group. The Indian Wars of the late 19th century were, to this project, an act of violence aimed at killing an ethnic group. B. Causing serious bodily or mental harm to the members of the group. For decades, the United States government supported a system of forced assimilation towards Native Americans, chiefly through the American Indian boarding school system set up by the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which was meant to rob young Native Americans of their language and heritage. C. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. The reservation system was set up by forced removal of natives from their ancestral lands to areas that were deemed unusable by Americans. The conditions on many of these reservations has left generations of natives far behind other races when it comes to health, education, nutrition, and quality of life. And finally, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. The American Indian boarding schools were means for the government to remove young Native Americans from their homes, send them to church-run schools, and civilize them. Many died through disease, neglect, suicide, or failed escape attempts. Through the examination of the UN definition of genocide, it is clear that the U.S. treatment of Native Americans falls under the category of genocide. But where does a student begin to understand the basics of Native American genocide? There are three texts that I believe will help you frame your understanding of the plight of Native Americans. The first is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, An Indian History of the American West by D. Brown. This book expresses a Native American perspective on the injustices and betrayals committed by the U.S. government. Brown describes Native Americans' displacement through forced relocations and years of warfare waged by the United States federal government. The government's dealings are portrayed as a continuing effort to destroy the culture, religion, and way of life of Native American peoples. Next, you have a larger study that places Native American genocide in the United States into a global and temporal perspective. American Holocaust, The Conquest of the New World by David Stannard. Stannard's book looks at the indigenous peoples of North and South America and concludes that Native Americans had undergone the, quote, worst human holocaust the world has ever witnessed, roaring across 2 continents nonstop for 4 centuries and consuming the lives of countless tens of millions of people, unquote. And finally, Native America and the Question of Genocide by Alex Alvarez. This book looks at the fundamental question of genocide itself. By looking at the many well-known examples of violence against Native Americans, such as the Sand Creek Massacre and the Long Walk of the Navajo, to determine where genocide occurred and where it did not. The book explores the destructive beliefs of the European settlers and then looks at topics including disease, war, and education through the lens of genocide. Now, once you have an understanding of these ideas, there are online resources which can help you find testimonies for your project. The main oral history collection of Native voices is called the Doris Duke Oral History Project. In this project, anthropologists and graduate students collected oral histories of American Indians across numerous states. Also, the University of Oklahoma has their own collection from the Duke Project that can be found here. And finally, the University of Arizona has info on the Arizona collections in the Duke Project on their website and hope for this to be available to the public at large very soon. All of these resources are available on our website for your use. We hope that this project will serve as a meaningful way for students to understand and document the issues of Native American genocide, as well as a repository for new analysis on testimonies. We thank you for joining us in this very important research topic.